Hello, in this video we are going to see admin block extensions. With this we will be able to embed UI elements displayed as cards in some resource pages such as the product details page or the order details page. These also have access to the GraphQL API, so we can query or mutate information with it directly from the resources page. The way this works resembles a lot to what we saw in the admin action extensions video, which I'll be linking in the video description in case you want to check that out too. And without further ado, let's get started. And with Visual Studio Code open here, I'm going to run npm init Shopify app latest to start an app using Shopify CLI. I'm going to name this admin block app, and I'm going to start by adding your first extension using this template, as we don't need to build a UI for this one other than what the admin block extension will have. This will install the dependencies, and I'll be back after this finishes. Now I'm going to take all these files and I'm going to move them out of this folder. You can keep yours there, but you'll have to cd into that folder. And now I'm going to run npm run Shopify app generate extension to generate the template for the admin block extension. I'm going to create this as a new app and keep the name the same. And then here I'm going to pick admin block. I'm going to keep the name as admin block, but you can change that to something else. And I'm going to select here TypeScript and React. This will install the dependencies, and I'll be back once this finishes installing. Now with the extension generated, let's see what we have. So here in extensions admin block, I'll start by looking at shopify.extension.toml. This is the configuration file that controls this extension. Here we have the API version. Right now this is the latest version. Yours might look different depending on when you create this. Then the name of the extension, this has this T and then name. This T stands for translate, and it will read the name from these local files. For example, it will pick the name key over here and use it over here. So the name of this extension will end up being admin block for stores that are in English, and if your store was in a different language, then it will pick the appropriate locale, or it will use the default in case it is not defined. Then we have the handle, the type of extension. You should keep this the same. And then the module, this is what controls what file renders the UI for this extension. In this case, it is this one over here. And lastly, we have the target. This is what controls where this extension will be placed in the admin. As you can see, noted in this comment, the target here must match the target that we have over here. And the list of valid targets at the moment are these three. So we can render either in the customer details page, in the order details page, or in the product details page. And this has to be updated also here in case you want to change the product details page, which is the default one. You can also check the available targets over here in this page. I'll be linking it in the video description. It includes all the different targets available, but you can look for that block to filter for the admin block extensions. Just make sure that over here the API version matches what you have over here in Shopify.extension.toml. This list right now only has these three targets, but in the future Shopify might end up adding a couple more. Now let's build an extension to see this in action. So let's say that we have a store with a large number of collections, and that we want an easy way to see what collections a product is a part of when we visit its page in the admin. Right now that's not possible out of the box, but we can build an admin block extension that queries the admin API, displays that information for us, and let us click on a view collection link to navigate directly to that collection. Let's see how to do that. The first thing to do is to go to shopify.app.toml here and update the scopes. In this case, I'm going to be querying collection data, so I'm going to need read products access. So I'm going to copy this and paste it over here. Depending on what type of data you are trying to access, you might need to add other scopes over here. I'll link this in the video description so you can check this page out. Next, let's go to blockextension.tsx and let's start cleaning this out. So I'm not going to be translating this to other languages, so I don't need this internationalization function. So I'm just going to say here, hello world. And the title of this extension will be collections, the store, for example. I'm going to save this, and now I'm going to run npm on dev. I will be asked here to link this app to a store. In this case, I want to link it to admin blocks. And in a moment, I'm going to be able to press P over here to go to my store. Let's click over here to this admin block extension. Right, we have to install it. So I'll click in this install your app link. And now let me close this. And I should be able to click on this again and see my block. Here we have it. And here we have the hello world that I put over here a moment ago. Now let's start querying the data that we need. So I'm going to remove this console.log here, and I'll say product ID will be equal to data.selected. The first one, because selected can have multiple items, but over here we are rendering this in a product details page, so there is only a single product that this extension will be targeting, so it will always be the first one, the one that we will be interested in. Now I'm going to import from React use effect and use state. Because we need to store this data in state, I'm going to say collections, set collections will be equal to use state, and this will start being null, and then we'll do, this will either be an array of collections or null. Let's quickly declare the collection type. So collection will be equal to an ID, which is a string, a title, which is a string, and an image, which is optional, but if it is defined, we have a URL, which is a string. And now let's also create collection data, because this is what we will be getting from GraphQL. You will have collections, edges, which is an array, the node, which will be of type collection, and has product, which will be a boolean. Let's save this, and now let's here use effect. This will run only at the beginning, and let's create an asynchronous function, fetch collections, and let's call it right away. And now I'm going to get the query function from this use API hook, so I can query directly the GraphQL API with all the headers and authentication tokens that I need to pass it. This function has all of that baked in, so I can just pass it my query. So here I'll say result will be equal to await query. I here can pass the type, which is collection data. And now query collections. I'm going to get the first 250. If you have more than those, you will have to use pagination. Now I'm going to get edges, node, ID, has product, and here we are going to pass it the product ID, title, image, and URL. Now we're going to check here if there are no errors, so if result.errors is falsy, and if there is data, so if result.data, then we are going to do collections including product will be equal to result.data collections edges. Then we are going to filter edge, and we are going to check for edge.node.has product. Then we are going to map this edge to edge.node, so it is in a flat structure just like this type. And then the result of this, we are going to say set collections will be collections including product. I'm going to save this, and for now I'm just going to console.log. Let's say console.log collections, and let's see what do we get over here. So if I refresh this, let's open the console. Here I get null And then it says that it failed to fetch. Let's see, do we have an error here? Let's console.log the result. And we have errors, so let's see. Access denied, for collections field. Okay, so it seems like my shopify.app.toml file was malformed, as it was missing several keys, and that's why Shopify didn't detect when I added the read products scope. To fix this, I just ran npm run dev and passed their reset flag to create this file again from scratch, and then I added the read products scope manually again. Once I did that, I ran npm run deploy to let Shopify know that I updated my shopify.app.toml file. And once I did that, I installed the app again, deleted the previous version, and now if I go to the console over here, I get first null and then an array. And if I try to go to a product that is included in a couple of collections, such as this one, I get first null, and then I get 2 items over here with these 2 collections. Now that we have the data that we need, let's start building the UI to display this to the user. But first we have to understand how to render UI over here, because as you can see, we are importing these components from the Shopify UI Extensions React admin library, and that's because we can only render elements or components imported from there. If I try rendering, for example, regular HTML like this p tag and putting hello world, when I save this, my UI will break and I will see nothing, and in the console over here I will get an error because this P component is not allowed. If I remove this, then I see my hello world again. If you're already familiar with building Shopify extensions that render some UI, you might have seen this approach. Basically, Shopify offers over here a list of components that we can use, and we can try to render our UI based on these constraints. If what we are trying to render is not available as a component here, then we cannot use it. For example, if I wanted to render a carousel here, there is no carousel component right now, so I'm out of luck in that scenario, and I will have to adapt my UI to the components that I have over here. Likewise, if what I'm trying to customize in one of these components is not available as a property, for example, let's look for the button. If I wanted to change the background color, you can see that there is no property for it, so I cannot change it. I have to use the default color that Shopify provides over here. And with these constraints in mind, let's start building the UI. So I'm going to delete this text, and let's import a heading. Make sure you import it from the correct library. And here I'm going to say collections. Let's set the size to 2. And now here, let's add a divider. Next, let's add another blocks tag. You can think of a blocks tag as a display flex with the flex direction set to columns. This way, we are able to use gap, so we can set a spacing between the different elements over here. So I'm going to set a gap of large, and let's do collections.map collection and index, and let's return an inline stack. This is like display flex, but set to rows instead of columns, as it was in the block stack. And now I'm going to say the inline alignment to a space between. For now, I'm just going to display text with the collection title, and then a link what I'm going to display instead, just view collection. And 2 over here, we are going to use a protocol. A protocol is basically a way of linking to this page directly without knowing the store's URL. Because even though in this case, I'm just going to be installing this in my store, if you were distributing this in the Shopify App Store, you don't know the URL of every single store. So what we can do for those scenarios is using Shopify :admin collections, and this is why we queried the ID. So I can say collection.id split and get the last item. The reason I needed to split this is because collection.id by default comes like this: global ID, Shopify, collection, and this is the actual numbers of the ID, but the URL in Shopify doesn't have any of this. It only has the numbers after the word collections. So I'm going to save this. Let's refresh this page. Let's see if maybe we are having an error. This is why nothing is being rendered. So cannot write. So if this is null, if collections is equal to null, let's return null. And now we are getting some UI. And if I click on view collection over here, I go to this collections page. Okay, so now let's render the image. So I'm going to say here, image size will be 32. Let's also quickly update the query to get the alt text to have best practices over here. Alt text can either be a string or null. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to wrap this in an inline stack, and I'm going to import image from the correct library over here. And I actually have to wrap this in a box because the image will take the full size of its parent container. So in this case, I'm going to say that I have to import box from the correct library, box from this one, and now I'll set the inline size to be image size. Inline size, you can think of it as the width, and block size is the height. In this case, they will both be the same. Now for the image, let's set the source to be collection.image.url and the alt text to be collection.image.alt text. Now the image is optional and might not be always included, so let's check for collection.image.url. So if that is defined, then we are going to render that. I'm going to paste it here. Otherwise, we are going to just render a box that will take that space. So let's set this to image size, and the block size will also be image size. Let's save this and let's see what we get. So here we have it. The first collection doesn't have an image, and that's why it has this white space over here, but the second one does have this as its featured image, so we get the image over here. But now this got messed up a little. For example, this text got separated into two lines, and that's because an inline stack takes as much space as it can horizontally. So what we can do to fix this is to also wrap this one in an inline stack, and by doing so, each one will take 50% of the available space. Then I can do inline alignment over here, set this to end, and now my text will be back to its original position. This image and this text are too close together, so what I can do now is in this inline stack set a gap of base, and that should fix it. Also over here we can set a gap for this divider and this heading, so let's do that. Let's set a base gap over here, and this now looks better spaced together. And we can actually move this divider from here to here, so we have a divider between each row at the top. And to not have this just be some white space, let's render over here an icon. Let's import it from the correct library, and here I'm going to say that the name will be image major, and if I save this, I get this image icon. It would be nice to give it a border, but there is no border property right now, neither in the icon component itself, nor in the box component. So this will have to do for now. And you can see all the available icons by going to the icon component. And if you scroll here to the bottom, you can see all of the available names, but this doesn't say much on how they look. But if you click here on Polaris icons, you can see over here their name and how the icon looks like. Now let's add a loading state, because even though if I refresh this page, by the time I scroll over here, everything has already loaded. If I was in a slow internet connection, this might not be the case. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to say these two or true, so we are always in this state. We get nothing by default because we are just rendering null, but let's change this. Let's render progress indicator, and we have to specify a size. Let's just say base, and we have to close this, and we get this loader, but it is not centered. However, we know how to do that. We just have to wrap this in an inline stack and set the alignment, the inline alignment, to center. And now we have this loader over here. I can remove this. And even though it's something that I'm not going to see, I know it is there in case someone uses this that has a slow internet connection. And finally, let's render some UI for products that are not part of any collection. So if I go to products over here and click, for example, on gift card, this one is not part of any collection, so I get these collections and nothing else. What would be better is to, in this case, if collections.length is equal to 0, let's return an inline stack with an inline alignment set to center, and a text here that says something like, this product is not part of any collection. And let's save this, and I get this message over here. It might be better to make it a heading, for example, to make it a bit bigger. And we can set the size to be maybe 3. This looks a bit better. And there you have it. That's how we build an admin block extension. If you want to see another example, check the admin action extension video, as the APIs are very similar, and in there I go over how to create an extension that both runs a query and changes some data by running mutations. A card for it should be appearing at the top. And if you found this video useful, remember to like and subscribe for more Shopify related content, and I'll see you all in the next video.